want to give a special thanks to Zapsplat.com for providing the sound effects and opening music to the chapters. On to the story.
Chapter 2. Dr. Jenny Hudson. When the Nakano model sank, I was laboring over my doctoral thesis. To be perfectly honest, I didn't have the luxury of keeping track of what was happening locally. And globally, forget it. Even watching Rachel Maddow once in a while only plagued me with guilt because my priorities were consumed with cetacean vocalization research. So let me put this out front right now. I categorically dismiss this notion that my thesis, which was seen by few by the way, was somehow prescient. Lord knows that if I had written a paper stating that Balanoptera musculus, the blue whale, and the Physeter macrocephalus, the sperm whale, were capable of coordinated attacks in the same deliberate cunning style as Orcinus orca, my career would have ended before it even began. That thesis would have gone straight into my professor's trash bin, I assure you. No one could have made such a claim. Therefore, all I could anecdotally present was that they mutually communicate in the subsonic range. Don't get me wrong, I'm still grateful that at least the thesis was accepted. To say my mind was elsewhere was an understatement. 5 months after the attack, I was sitting at my commencement ceremonies at Manoa. 10 grueling years in the making, there I was. A girl from Redondo Beach, California, the only daughter to Peter and Vicky Hudson, sitting proudly with my cap and gown in the sweet, heavy humidity of the Hawaiian air. God, I wish my father was alive to see that moment. It took me 5 years to grapple with the realization that the day he dies was one of the best days of my life. I can only tell you about it because I have come to accept it. It was a cold, overcast Saturday morning in February of 2002. I was just a sophomore at the local high school Redondo Union. My dad and I had been planning all week to go stand-up paddleboarding at Torrance Beach, just a mile from our house. The California gray whales were in the middle of their southern migration from the frigid northern hemisphere to the calving grounds in the Sea of Cortez. If we were lucky, we might see one or two close to the shore, too close for the crowded Voyager Whale Watch tour boat that leaves out of the harbor. I still can't believe that I almost slept in. I mean, you know how hard it is to roust a teenager from her bed on a Saturday morning? But my dad was persistent, coming into my room with a fresh cup of coffee, all cheery and ready to go. Come on, honey, it's going to be great. Okay, I'm up. I told him. I was half awake, to be honest, but at least I was up. Suddenly, the Voyager tour boots sounded a lot more appealing, to be honest. I knew that wasn't going to happen, so I pulled myself together and grabbed my gear. Within 20 minutes, we were on the shoreline, where we were greeted by my dad's colleague, acoustic engineer Dr. Paul Byous. His influence on my journey to pursue a doctorate in marine biology cannot be understated. Of course, I wouldn't have seen that at the time. Neither could my father, for that matter. Soon he would go on to have an uncle status in my life, but that morning he was just Dr. Byous. Good morning, you two. It's great to see you, young lady. Shaking my dad's hand in the cold air as he gave us the latest update. I was up at the Point Vicente Whale Watch Center yesterday afternoon. I'm very happy to report that the California gray whale numbers continue to climb. We stand an excellent chance of seeing a few this morning. I guess that I was still waking up because of Steadham saying, "That's great." I complained again. "I hope so, it's cold." Well, I put on my wetsuit and life vest. Ugh. You got to do it to believe it. Paddling out to 40 yards past the small waves on the beach that morning was hard. I won't lie to you. It's not the same as doing it in the summertime, that's for sure. But once we all stood up past the breakers and started paddling out, I warmed up enough to make the morning a little more tolerable. Now, I don't remember if it was our plan or not, but we lined up about 15 feet apart with me on the right closest to the shore, Paul in the middle, and my dad on the left facing north. Scanning the cool, calm water for the sight of blows by the grays, Paul asked me, "How's school going? Do you have any idea what you might major in when you graduate?" Proudly, I told him, "I'm the youngest writer on the school newspaper staff this year. Right now, I'm considering majoring in journalism." But when my dad, who was entitled to the bragging rights, I guess, cut me off. But she's got straight A's in the sciences, Paul. She could be a doctor if she wanted to be. I had to remind him that I get queasy at the sight of blood, Dad. You know that. Paul responded, doctors come in all subjects, Jenny. Look at me. You know that I have my doctorate in acoustic engineering. You know when the time is right. Keep your options open, young lady. My dad conceded, Paul's right, honey. Keep your options open. And wouldn't you believe it? In the next moment, one option presented itself, although I could not have known the significance at the time. Paul and I both simultaneously shouted out, blows, as I pointed them out to my dad, northwest of our position in the water. Pay attention to the details of my story at this point, because this is where the lesson began. My dad told me, stop paddling. We want them to be able to predict where we will be. It's a simple sign of respect, Jenny. One should never make a whale change its behavior by going to them. You might see other people do it, but I tell you right now, that's presumptuous. Absolutely, Paul added in agreement. I keep forgetting that these are men who grew up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, and for them, it was a sacred moment. At only 15 years old, I just thought it was cool. Boy, was I wrong. It's harder to maintain your balance on a paddleboard when you're not moving, so it took some effort for me to maintain my balance as we waited to see where the whales might surface. Fortunately, within the next 2 minutes, the blows were seen again, just 60 yards in front of us. My dad was calmly telling me, hold, hold, as we scanned the surface of the water looking for telltale footprints. We didn't have to look far. Making their introduction with a pair of blows, a mother California gray, and her 2-year-old calf. I now know the age, but at the time I couldn't have ventured a guess. Surfaced gently between me and Paul. For what was only a few seconds, but seemed at the time much longer. The 30-foot-long mother and I had direct eye contact. I was too mesmerized to break the moment. But for some reason I felt a deep sense of trust, and now that I know what I know, this mother trusted me as well. The only way I can describe it, for those of you who will never experience this, it's like when you look into the eyes of a golden retriever mother, proud to present her pup to the world. All you can do is smile back. Well, that's exactly what I did. How could I not? The eyes on this whale was only 4 feet away from my board. The calf, which was on Paul's side, swam over to my side and did just as its mother did, looking me straight in the eye. Just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. My dad and Paul didn't say a word. I know that they did not want to infringe upon this special moment that I was having. After several seconds, the spell was broken, and the mother and calf sunk beneath the surface and continued their migration south. The first thing I remember hearing was hooting coming from the shore. Apparently a couple of people on the beach had seen what happened and wanted to share in the witnessing with us. That's cool. That's very cool. I'm not embarrassed to tell you that my eyes welled up with emotion. How was it that they trust us? I believe, Jenny, that they know more about us than we know about them, Paul answered back. Only one teardrop rolled down my cool face, but I distinctly remember mouthing the words to my dad, thank you. Of course, this was for not letting me sleep in that morning. He just gave me his broad smile, which I missed the most, and said, anytime, sweetheart. That was the first time that I cried that day. After we made our way back to the beach, my dad invited Paul over to our house to hang out for the day. But I remember him saying that he had to decline, something about his having to drive down to the Scripps Institute of Oceanography down in San Diego. Unfortunately, I don't even have time to go to breakfast, Paul said as we headed back to the parking lot. We said our goodbyes, and I did not see him again until the funeral. What funeral, you ask? Let me put it this way. The best part of my dad had come to pass. Around 6:30 that evening, we were all hanging out at the house with my Aunt Judy, my dad's little sister, and her husband, Uncle Henry. To this day, my mom still lives in that house on Avenue D in Redondo Beach. Me and my little brother James were playing video games on the living room television while the adults chattered away at the dining room table. Normally, my mom and Judy would have whipped up something magnificent for dinner, but it had been a long day and no one was in a mood to cook. My dad, I swear he ate Mexican food at least twice a week, called in an order to my favorite Mexican restaurant, El Burrito Jr., just 4 blocks away on Pacific Coast Highway, in between Avenues A and B. Locals just call that street PCH. This should only take 10 or 15 minutes, I remember him saying as he waved off Henry's offer to go with him. A year later, I had to know how it all happened. I stupidly thought that reading the police report on the accident would help with my grief. Let me give you all a piece of advice. That is not appropriate reading for a girl in her junior year at high school. Nope. It really screwed me up. It really did. Therefore, I'll tell it in my own way. Minutes after leaving the house, my dad pulled up in front of the takeout-only A-frame building. The winter sun had been down for almost an hour. That portion of PCH is right after a slight curve in the road, and my dad, I guarantee you, for the first time in his life, presumed that all the traffic going south were aware of him exiting his car. A student from my school, who shall remain nameless, was also heading south along PCH. He was driving his red Ford Toyota pickup in the right-hand lane closest to my dad. Just before the curve, he checked a text on his cell phone. He could not have picked a worse spot to take his fucking attention off the road. I'm sorry. All it took was a swipe from his truck to crush my dad's chest into his own open driver's side door. What followed was the sound of ripping steel and snapping bone, according to the other people waiting in line for their orders. It was not until the teen driver got to Avenue B, another 70 feet down the road, that he could muster the reaction to slam on the brakes, sending my dad along with the mangled door another 60 feet down the road to Avenue C and PCH. Traffic going both directions came to a screeching halt as drivers and patrons of the restaurant quickly called 911. The first Good Samaritan on the scene was instantly repulsed at the gaping chest wound and grotesquely twisted legs of my dad, laying flat in the street, eyes still open. Complicating matters, the owner of the red Toyota promptly passed out from shock upon exiting his vehicle. Now there were two bodies in the southbound lanes of the highway. Within 2 minutes, Redondo police had arrived, and they were of no doubt that my dad died instantly, or as close to instantly as a few seconds could be. It fell to the first responder to cover his mutilated body with a tarp. There was nothing more to be done, short of starting the investigation. Paramedics could only address the medical needs of the teen driver, who was now pale and unresponsive. At least he would live. I have to state it right here, only because it is fair, that he didn't have any alcohol or drugs in his system. Right? I gotta put that on the record. It was just the stupid texting that resulted in the accident. Back at my house, only a block and a half away from my dad's lifeless body lying in the road, we all took note of the sound of emergency vehicles and thought nothing of it. PCH was no stranger to fender benders and occasional pedestrian and vehicle accidents. 30, then 40 minutes went by before we started to get worried. My mom tried to reach my dad on her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She was right when she tried to reassure us that knowing Peter, he's probably just helping with whatever accident that is. That's just who he is. However, the feeling of anxiety took over the whole house by the time there was a knock on the door. James was closest to it from his position on the living room floor, so he got there first, followed by me. By the time the door was open to reveal two Redondo Beach police officers, a senior officer and a female rookie, everyone in our household was standing in the doorway. The female rookie officer broke down and cried instantly at the sight of this obviously close family group greeting her at the door of this house, which she and her superior were now obligated to devastate with their bad news. What a shitty job that must be. I can't imagine. Anyway, with the telling of my father's horrible death came the second time that I cried. And the rest of the school year was just a blur. A year later, after I mustered up the unwise courage to read the police report for myself, I was still a wreck. In fact, it was the rookie officer, now a fully vested officer with her own patrol car, who had showed me the report at the police station. God, I wish that I had changed my mind and taken her advice when she said, "Are you sure that you want to read this? Do you feel that strongly about it?" Yes, I need to know the details. I'm not getting any better. Big mistake. Whew. What the hell was I thinking? Afterwards, she was kind enough to drive me home and walk me to the front door where I was greeted by my mom. We both just melted, sobbing for hours afterwards. So much for the modest gain that I had made in my school grades. As it turned out, Dr. Byous was a tenured professor at the University of Hawaii, and he was scheduled to teach a course on hydrophone analysis of cetacean vocalization that same year. He suggested that the family come out to Honolulu for the Christmas break. The invitation was promptly accepted with gratitude. One of the first orders of business upon our arrival on Oahu was to get back in love with the sea. I hadn't really noticed that I stopped going to the beach after my dad died, but it must have been pretty obvious to my friends. Uncle Paul, the name now used by me and James, had arranged for the family to take a humpback whale sightseeing tour in the hopes that this might do the trick in returning my trust in the ocean. Fortunately, during that time of year, the majority of northern Pacific humpback whales make their way back to the relatively shallow waters of the Oahu Channel west of Maui. These whales are kamaina, meaning native born to the peoples of Hawaii, and their return is treated like a homecoming of Aumakua, family guardians. Before the tour was over, I would come to take on this spiritual connection to the whales, and I would make it my mission to understand their language. Not only did we spot a large pod of humpbacks, but these were accompanied by their smaller cousins, the spinner dolphins. As humpbacks occasionally breached the water, a peculiar sight was witnessed by all of us on the tour boat. One humpback was spy hopping, while the spinner dolphin would slide along its head and back into the water. The spectacle went on for 30 minutes, and it was evident that both animals seemed to take it as a form of play. Paul, I asked, do they understand each other? How is it that they cannot understand each other if they're both playing this game? That is the mystery that we're still trying to figure out, Jenny. The next morning, a little sunburned and my face still sore from smiling so much the day before, we were given a VIP tour of Paul's acoustical research lab on campus. Oh my God, it was so cool. He had arranged to have a lab coat with my full name embroidered on as a gift when we got to his office before the tour. When I'm not teaching, I'm working on a prototype cetacean GPS tag that I call Voices, he said with a slight hint of pride. It is an acronym for Voices, Ocean Integrated, Cetacean Exclusive System. If everything works out the way I hope that it should, it will record the usual parameters of global position, water temperature, depth of dive, but it will also give me the whale's vital signs of respiration and heartbeat. More importantly, it will record the target whale's vocalizations as well as the vocalizations of other cetaceans, whatever the species, within 400 miles. It is my hope, Jenny, that we might learn if they share a common way of communicating. That way we might learn why your dolphin and humpback whales were playing together yesterday, he concluded. Julie, Paul said to one of his student research assistants, would you be kind enough to show the Hudson family the rest of the campus, please? Of course, Dr. Byous, she replied, and off we went while Paul stayed behind in the lab. When the tour was over, I knew then and there that I would major in marine biology. Perhaps if I got lucky, one day I might work alongside my Uncle Paul in revealing the mysteries of the language of the great cetaceans. Finally, that happened in May of 2014. Now I'm Dr. Hudson. And that ends Chapter 2. Chapter 3 coming up.